I'm glad that you're all here this morning. We have several of our members who are traveling and vacationing and doing all the fun things that regard with summer. And we're also thankful and very blessed that we have visitors with us, and you are welcome guests. We're thankful that you have come our way, and we're just blessed to have you all here. We have been conducting a little study on evangelism. Can we turn this down just a little bit? I have to get an echo. On evangelism, kind of a little bit different approach with our evangelism. And we first started off by, if you're going to be a follower of Christ, Christ was very specific when he talked about knowing the cost. You're going to have to count the cost if you want to follow me. If you want to put me on in baptism, you want to be my disciple and follow me, then you need to know what the costs of that are. And he was very clear with his teaching. You're going to have to live a sacrificial life, and you're going to have to put me first in all things. And that's one of the things that he talked about. If you're going to be a follower of Christ, then he has to be first. The second thing that we talked about is we needed to be devoted to one another. We need to be devoted to the Lord in our relationship, continue to cultivate our relationship with Him, being devoted to one another, making sure that each and every one of us are taken care of. If there's any needs, whatever they are, we make sure that that's happening. Devoted to the members here, devoted to our community, but most importantly, devoted to God. And one of the ways of being devoted to God is we need to be devoted to the Scriptures. We need to be readers of the Scriptures every single day. And having a devotion that is unwavering, unshaken, and steadfast in all things. Because we know hardships come. We know things happen to us that can rock us. And we want to make sure and know that when that happens, we have family members here that are devoted to one another, that will see them through, that will walk through whatever it is that they're going through, shoulder to shoulder, standing together. Because Paul says in Galatians that we are to bear one another's burdens. And if I'm going to bear your burden, then I need to be devoted to you. And making sure that your relationship with Christ is where it needs to be. Devoted to me, making sure that my relationship with Christ is where it needs to be. We're devoted to one another. Today, as part of the being evangelistic in nature and heart, is sharing hospitality. Now, hospitality is one of those things that's cross-covenant. You see it in the Old Testament. Paramount in the Old Testament. You see it in the New Testament. You see it in such subtle ways that you don't really catch that it's hospitality that's being shown. But hospitality is one of the core characteristics of God. And that's what it is. And one of the most important parts of evangelism is showing and receiving hospitality. We strive to be a church that is hospitable to our members, hospitable to our visitors, hospitable to the people in our community. They need to know that we're here, that we care. And when there is a need, whatever that need is, we do whatever it takes to make sure that those needs are met. Whether it's through prayer, actually going to somebody's house, even if somebody we don't know. Whatever the need is, we show and share hospitality. Hospitality has 3 phases, in case you didn't know. There's a welcoming in our hospitality. Welcoming somebody into our home, welcoming somebody into our fellowship, welcoming somebody into a relationship. There's a welcoming. Then there is a staying in that process. Whether it's visiting at somebody's home, there's a staying process. It literally means a couple of days, weeks. But if you're the visitor, you're going to make sure that you don't become one of those smelly fishes after a while. It's time to go. But there's a staying in hospitality. And at the end of that staying, there's also ascending in our hospitality. When it's time to depart and leave, when it's time for people to move off or move on, and we've had that here. We've had brothers and sisters who have passed on into glory. We've had brothers and sisters and families here who have moved away to somewhere else. There is a blessing in our ascending that shows hospitality. So there's 3 phases in that. Having said all of that, we're going to start off in Genesis chapter 18. We're going to look at verses 1 through 8. Now, we've got 3 texts that we're going to look at this morning, and each and every one of these texts could be a sermon in and of itself. But we're going to hit the high points of it, and I'll try to bring in to what we're talking about this morning. I got something tickling me. All right, Genesis chapter 18, starting in verse 1. We see here that says, "And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre, as he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men were standing in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, and bowed himself to the earth. And he said, O Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourself under the tree, while I bring a morsel of bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on. Since you have come to your servant." So they said, "Do as you have said." And Abraham went quickly into the tent to Sarah, and he said, "Quick, 3 seahs of fine flour, knead it and make cakes." And Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to a young man who prepared it quickly. Then he took curds of milk and the calf that he had prepared and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, "Where is Sarah your wife?" And he said, "She is in the tent." Then the Lord said, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son." I went beyond what we said we were going to go, but there's a point of that. So what we see here in this chapter is, right before that, Abraham is Abram. And he has gone into a covenant with God. And in that covenant with God, God says, "You are no longer Abram, but you are Abraham." And in that covenant, he was to take all the male servants, his sons, any of male descendants that's under his care and authority, and were to be circumcised. And that was a sign that they were going to be in a covenant with God. And so you see at the beginning of this story, Abraham and his son Ishmael and all his male servants have been circumcised. So now that we get to this point here, Abraham is sitting at the door of his tent in the heat of the day. Possibly, that's probably one of the coolest places you can get with the air blowing. You pitch the tent in such a way that you have the shade, catching the breeze, trying to keep that tent cool as much as possible. And he's sitting there, obviously because he's sore. He's just been circumcised. He's not going to be doing a whole lot. He's not going to be moving around a whole lot. But then he sees 3 men. And notice what the text says. He sees 3 men when he's at the tent. And he doesn't just say, "Hey guys, how you doing?" He runs out and he meets them. There's that greeting part. There's that welcoming part. He runs out to meet them. That's the welcoming. And as he welcomes them, he says, "Come and let me take care of you." And you see here that he washes their feet. It's a huge cultural thing in the Jewish culture. This is a servant who is welcoming them into his place, making sure that they're clean and taken care of because they've been traveling. And not only does he say he washes his feet, but he also says, "Sit here, let me get you something to drink." And then he runs and he tells Sarah, "Make some bread." And then he goes to the herd of his cattle, and he goes to the herdsman and he says, Pick out a calf and prepare it quickly. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know how quickly you can prepare a calf. A lot of time has to elapse here because it takes some time. I mean, I've never butchered a calf, but I've butchered a lot of deer. And I know how long it takes. And the calf is a lot bigger than the deer. So there's some time that happens. We just think this is happening really fast. No, there's some time here. There's some time being invested in this welcoming and in this staying part. Getting to know one another. And so he washes them and he feeds them. So that's the staying part that's happening. And in this staying part we see here, if you look at the text, he says, Abraham says, "O Lord, if I found favor in your sight, please do not pass by your servant." In other words, let me serve these men. It's imperative, God, that I serve these men. And we know through reading the rest of the story that these are just not 3 ordinary men. They come bearing a promise. And that promise is that this time next year, you're going to have a son. You and Sarah will have a son. And incidentally, Sarah also gets renamed. Sarai gets now Sarah. So we see that really quickly. Now, turn over to Acts chapter 16. We're going to end up coming back to all this here in a minute and tying it all together. Acts chapter 16, starting in verse 11. So it says here, so setting sail from Troas, we made a direct voyage to Samothrace, and the following day to Neapolis, and from there to Philippi, which is a leading city of the district of Macedonia and a Roman colony. We remained in the city some days, and on the Sabbath day we went outside the gate to the riverside, where we supposed there was a place of prayer. And we sat down and spoke to the women who had come together. One who heard us was a woman named Lydia, from the city of Thyatira, a seller of purple goods who was a worshiper of God. The Lord opened her heart to pay attention to what was said by Paul. And after she was baptized in her household as well, she urged us, saying, if you have judged me to be faithful to the Lord, come to my house and stay. And she prevailed upon us. Interesting thing about this story here is, the first thing that we see is, they come into this town, and as custom, they would generally go to a synagogue, but apparently there wasn't one here. Or, for whatever reason, they go to the river because they heard this is where a place of prayer, where a bunch of ladies were coming together to pray. And so they go there, and they preach the gospel to these women who are there at the riverside praying. And the lady who was there is named Lydia. She was a seller of purple goods, which means she's a businesswoman. A very lucrative business, I might add, because she sells purple goods, which is a very rare and costly material. Purple dyes were very hard to come by. And that's also a very interesting study that we'll get into sometime later. But this indicates that she's wealthy. She has a high-end clientele, if you will. Common people don't buy purple clothing because it's so expensive. Something that's interesting about this text also, it says that she is a worshiper of God. Now, Genesis, we just see that Abraham has entered a covenant relationship with God. Here we see that Lydia is a worshiper of God, probably a proselyte Jew. We don't think she was Jewish. We think she was Greek of some form. Definitely Gentile. And so she's a proselyte Jew, having been converted. And what we also know from the text is she is a prayerful woman. And because she meets Paul there, she sits at Paul's feet. And it says, the text says, Lord, open her heart. And she heard the gospel that was preached to her by Paul. And she and all her household were baptized into Christ. And here after that, we see after the conversion, she insists that they come to her house. This is something that we just read right over if we're not really careful. We don't understand a lot of times the meaning of what it means to invite somebody to your home, especially in this culture. What this means is you're going to come to my home and you're going to be under the protection of my home. Everything that you're going to have in my home, I'm going to provide for you. I'm going to provide for you not only meals, I'm going to provide for you shelter, protection, clean clothes, making sure that you're washed and taken care of. Every need that you have is going to be met when you come under my house. Everything. So there's this welcoming by coming to her home. She and her household will take care of their every need. That is the staying part. Making sure that while you're here, you are taken care of. And if you drop down and look in verse 40, it says here, in verse 40, so they went out of the prison and visited Lydia. They had gone, because Paul and Silas had been arrested. And after they've been arrested and been released, they go back to Lydia. They go back to the house. And when they go back to the house, now they're getting ready to leave. And when they had seen the brothers, and they encouraged them, and then they departed. And so in verse 40, you also have, after their arrest and release, you see the sending that Lydia and her household does for Paul and Silas. So you still see the three phases of hospitality. You still got the welcoming, the staying, and the sending. Now, if you look also in Acts chapter 16, starting in verse 25, we have a very interesting story here. It says, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundation of the prisons were shaken. And immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's bonds were unfastened. When the jailer awoke and saw that the prison doors were open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself, supposing that the prisoners had escaped. But Paul cried out with a loud voice, "Do not harm yourself. We're all here." And the jailer called for lights, and he rushed in. And trembling with fear, he fell down before Paul and Silas. Then he brought them out and said, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" And they said, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." And they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all who were in his house. And he took them that same hour of the night and washed their wounds. And he was baptized at once, he and all his family. Then he brought them up into his house, set food before them, and he rejoiced along with his entire household that he had believed in God. So what we see in this powerful message here, the jailer that is converted. What we also notice here is that Paul and Silas were arrested. And instead of being all downtrodden and saying, "Woe is me, why is this happening to me? I'm a follower of Christ. Everything's supposed to be peachy keen. Everything's supposed to be hunky-dory and okay. I find myself arrested and thrown in prison for speaking your name, Jesus." That's not their attitude. They actually thought of themselves worthy, that they were blessed, being worthy to be persecuted for the name of Christ. And in that joy of being found persecuted, they're singing songs, they're singing hymns, and they're praying. And it says that the prisoners were listening. Well, not only the prisoners were evidently listening, the jailer was listening. I mean, I think I would find it kind of interesting that you're in shackles and chains, and you're finding some way to rejoice. Seems kind of odd. Something about that, boy. I don't know what they were singing. I don't know what kind of hymns they were singing. I don't know the words that they were saying in their prayer. But their songs and their prayers had an impact on the jailer. You see, singing songs is a very powerful teaching tool that we have when we come together to worship. And we see in this setting the songs of praise and also prayer. They could have walked out after the earthquake. They could have just made their escape. But they didn't. The doors were open. The shackles fell off. The jailer comes rushing in because he's thinking they've all escaped. And because they've all escaped, this is going to fall on me. So he draws his sword. He's about to kill himself. And Paul cries out, "We're all here." And the jailer's response was, he knows something miraculous has happened. This just doesn't happen. This isn't natural. The jailer has witnessed something that is miraculous. And he knew God must be involved. And the only way he knows God must be involved is because of the songs that were sung and the prayers that were prayed. And he rushes in and he asks the most powerful question to Paul. What must I do to be saved? How does he know he's lost if he didn't know what was being sung and prayed about? And then Paul at that moment teaches him the gospel. And I wonder what the jailer was going through. I was just a part of your beatings. And I was a part of your incarceration. And he could have felt horribly, horribly guilty. And wanted to just get away from that situation because of the guilt that he faced. But that's not his attitude. He sees the light and he's baptized into Christ. And then what is his actions? What does he do? He washes their wounds. There's that welcoming. He tells them, "Come to my house." As a part of that welcoming. And as part of that welcoming, their wounds are washed. Their wounds are anointed with oil for the healing processes. He takes them to his house and he feeds them. And again, when you invite somebody into your house, you are under the protection and the provisions of that person. They provide every need you have in their culture. You take on the responsibility of making sure they're taken care of. So you see that welcoming there. And then you see the staying. Now, when you're staying here, you are my guests. You will be taken care of. And at the end of that, we also see that there is a sending. But Paul wasn't going to let all of it go, saying, we're going to go before the magistrate because you've beaten Roman citizens. And they were trying to sweep it under the rug. And the jailer is making sure that they're taken care of and protected. And when it was time, not only was Lydia there in the sending, but so was the jailer. Making sure that they were sent on their way. So we have that welcoming and that staying and that sending in just these three stories. So what does all this mean? What does all this look like? In conclusion, the three places we looked at today, we see importance of hospitality. You see, Abraham couldn't have just let the three men pass by, because after all, he was healing. It was also very hot. He could have just said, I don't want to deal with the day. I'm healing, I'm sore. It's 115 degrees outside. I don't want to. Hey, go be warm and filled. And let the three men pass by. But he doesn't do that. Instead, he showed hospitality. And what's interesting about this, because Abraham showed hospitality, we are still reaping the benefits of that hospitality today. Because who was the promise of all the generations? More than stars in the sky, more than the sands in the sea. We are now spiritually sons of Abraham because of what he did. Don't think that you are so insignificant that you have no part or place in the kingdom. The decisions you make to follow Christ and to show hospitality can have effects way beyond your years. There's a ripple effect that could last for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. But the thing is Abraham was looking for a way to serve, regardless of how he felt. Lydia took the opportunity to house and take care of Paul, Timothy, and Silas. As a result, she became a mighty worker in the Lord's kingdom. I would encourage you to do a study and a search on Lydia. When the jailer heard the truth, and he and his household were baptized, and the jailer became the host. I find that interesting. The one who had a part of the incarceration, because he seized the opportunity that the Lord presented him, became the host to those who delivered the message. But if you read the texts that we looked at closely, you will see God also showed hospitality in all three of these stories. Just before this, God entered a covenant relationship with Abraham. And because of that covenant relationship, we still reap the benefits of that. Because it's through that line Jesus is born into. God invited Lydia into salvation through the gospel spoken through Paul. God also invited the jailer into salvation through the gospel spoken through Paul. God continues to show us hospitality each and every day. There is a welcoming into the family, and there is a staying. The only thing that's different is there's no more sinning. Because when you're in with hospitality with God and you stay within the confines of His truth, we're with Him forever. Now there will be a sending as far as this side of heaven. But when we're with Him for eternity, there's a place of rest. And that staying is forever. So you see, to put on Christ in baptism and to be Christ-like is to show hospitality. We're very good at being hospitable to our family members most of the time. It's another thing to be hospitable to a perfect stranger, to someone who doesn't look like us, smell like us, think like us. but to see them the way Christ sees them. A human being worthy of going to the cross for. One who is made in the image of God himself. You know, there's a little statement going around saying, you know, come to this restaurant, we'll treat you like family. I don't want to go there. Because some families just don't treat each other very well. We want to be known as a family who loves one another, who is continually inviting and showing hospitality. But there is a welcoming, and there is a staying, and eventually there will be a sending. To be a blessing to those because we have been blessed. To be welcoming to those because we have been welcomed into a fold. To be a sustainer of life because we have been shown life-sustaining grace and mercy. We are vital to one another through the love and sacrifice and the blood of Jesus Christ. We battle together. We love together. We cry together. We mourn together. We share victories together. God also wants all to know Him. He's always offering an invitation for those who want to come into His fold. And if you're hurting, despaired, whatever you're going through, we've got a body here that will show grace, mercy, and kindness. Whatever your need is this morning, we're here to help you with that. If it's put on Christ in baptism, we're here to help you with that as well. Whatever your need is this morning, we ask that you come now as we stand and as we sing.